The hive fleets of the Tyranids are an unstoppable, consuming force, driven by the insatiable hunger of their hive mind. Their arrival in the galaxy is akin to an apocalyptic tide, devouring all in their path without thought or reason, simply because they must. Now imagine the ultimate nightmare of the Imperium of man. Terra, the cradle of humanity and the throne of the God Emperor, consumed by the Tyranids. Such a scenario is almost unthinkable, yet it is a possibility, one that would mark the end of the Imperium, if not the galaxy itself. The invasion of Terra by the Tyranids would begin with the arrival of a hive fleet of unprecedented magnitude. No hive fleet previously encountered by the Imperium could compare to the monstrous armada descending upon the Sol system. Unlike past incursions, which targeted fringe worlds or regions far from the heart of the Imperium, this assault would be an overt and deliberate challenge to humanity's bastion of faith and power. As tendrils of the hive fleet's shadow in the warp fell over Terra, the Astronomicon would flicker and falter, spreading despair among the defenders. The void defenses of the Sol system, though formidable, would find themselves overwhelmed. Tyranid bioships, driven by the Hive Mind's flawless coordination, would swarm past defensive positions, trading tens of thousands of living vessels for the chance to land their spores upon the surface of Holy Terra itself. Once the invasion reached the surface, the nightmare would truly begin. Terra, already a world of billions crammed into massive hive cities, would offer a wealth of biomass to fuel the Tyranid advance. The planet's natural defenses, the Adeptus Custodes, the Sisters of Silence, and the countless regiments of the Astra Militarum stationed there, would fight with a desperate fury. However, the Tyranids are not an enemy that can be outlasted. For every bioform destroyed, another would take its place, bred and evolved to exploit weaknesses in the defenders' strategies. Lictors would stalk the shadows of Terra's labyrinthine underhives, preying on isolated groups of defenders. Gargantuan bio-titans would lumber through the sprawl of humanity's cities, smashing through the ancient and sacred architecture of the ecclesiarchy as they tore apart tanks and fortifications with impunity. The defenders' greatest hope would lie in the Adeptus Mechanicus and the arcane war engines they might muster from Mars. The titans of the Collegia Titanica, ancient machines powered by the prayers of tech priests and the fury of their princeps, would prove to be some of the most devastating weapons against the Tyranid tide. Even so, the hive mind is a foe that adapts. It would observe, learn, and evolve its bioforms to counter the Titan's mighty weaponry, using swarms of smaller creatures to overwhelm and cripple the war machines before they could inflict significant damage. Slowly but surely, the Tyranids would close their grip on Terra, each victory by the defenders being short-lived as the hive mind adjusted its strategies. Meanwhile, the psyker population of Terra, long essential to maintaining the Astronomicon and the Imperium's warp navigation, would be particularly vulnerable. The shadow in the warp, a psychic null field generated by the Tyranids, would turn Terra's many psykers into liabilities. These unfortunates, their minds fractured by the hive mind's oppressive presence, would become unpredictable and dangerous. Mass suicides, psychic detonations, and warp rifts would only add to the chaos, turning Terra's cities into hellscapes of uncontrolled psychic phenomena. The High Lords of Terra, guardians of the Imperium's political and military machinery, would face impossible decisions. Evacuation would be unthinkable. There is no Imperium without Terra, no Emperor without the Golden Throne. Yet to stay and fight would be to invite annihilation. In their desperation, they might unleash weapons of forbidden power, perhaps even turning to the ancient and barely understood technology of the Dark Age of technology. Some might argue for invoking the aid of Xeno's allies, such as the Eldar or even the Necrons, a heresy so profound that it could split the Imperium in its darkest hour. But against the Tyranids, even desperate alliances might not suffice. As the Tyranids advanced toward the Imperial Palace, the battle would take on an even more apocalyptic scale. The Custodes, the Emperor's most loyal and genetically perfected warriors, would hold the line with unmatched skill and ferocity, but they are few compared to the billions of Xenos surging across the planet. Even the Sisters of Battle, who would gladly die to protect their sacred homeworld, could only hold for so long. The palace's ancient defenses, its void shields, turrets, and labyrinthine fortifications, would slow the Tyranids but could not halt them indefinitely. The Hive Mind's relentless focus would eventually breach even the most sacred of walls. If the Golden Throne itself fell to the Tyranids, the consequences would be catastrophic. The Emperor, who has maintained a tenuous grip on life for 10 millennia, would be consumed or destroyed. Without his psychic presence anchoring the Astronomicon, warp travel across the galaxy would become impossible, dooming countless Imperial worlds to isolation and chaos. Humanity's faith in the Emperor, already shaken by the horrors of the Tyranid invasion, would collapse entirely. Many would turn to despair, while others might embrace heretical faiths or fall prey to the ruinous powers in their desperation. The consumption of Terra's biomass by the Tyranids would also have profound implications for the galaxy at large. Terra is not just the spiritual heart of the Imperium, but also a repository of ancient knowledge, relics, and genetic material. The Hive Mind, which absorbs the genetic and psychic essence of its prey, would gain access to the secrets of human biology, technology, and even the Emperor's own genetic code. This newfound power would allow the Tyranids to create even more deadly and efficient bioforms, accelerating their conquest of the galaxy. The Hive Mind, having absorbed the genetic material of the Emperor and the wealth of knowledge stored on Terra, would become a threat of unparalleled magnitude. With access to the Emperor's unique genetic code and the latent psychic potential within it, the Tyranids could evolve into an even greater psychic force. This could lead to the emergence of Tyranid bioforms capable of rivaling the most powerful psychers in the galaxy. Perhaps worse, the Hive Mind itself might become a psychic entity of even greater potency, its shadow in the warp extending farther and with more devastating effects. Entire sectors could be plunged into psychic silence, cutting off all warp travel and communication, rendering the Imperium's remaining defenses even more fractured and isolated. The wider galactic community would not escape the ripple effects of Terra's fall. The Eldar, long watchful of humanity as both ally and adversary, would likely view the Tyranid ascension as the ultimate existential threat. Even their own efforts to preserve their crumbling civilizations might falter in the face of a Hive Mind empowered by the Emperor's essence. The Orcs, ever seeking war, would undoubtedly relish the growing conflict, but even they might find themselves overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the Tyranid swarm. Without humanity as a significant bulwark, other galactic powers such as the Tau would be unlikely to withstand the Hive Fleet's expansion. The Necrons, with their ancient hatred of all biological life, might fight against the Tyranids, but even their advanced technology might falter before a foe that can adapt to their every tactic. Among the Imperium's remaining forces, chaos and desperation would reign. Those loyalist elements scattered across the galaxy might try to rally, perhaps establishing a new seat of power on Macridge or another major system. However, without the psychic beacon of the Astronomicon, interstellar travel would be slow and unreliable. Many worlds would simply descend into anarchy, their populations turning to heresy, rebellion, or even chaos worship as their faith in the Emperor and the Imperium crumbled. The forces of chaos, long the Imperium's eternal foe, would find themselves in a strange position. On one hand, the destruction of Terra and the Emperor's psychic absence would be a victory for the ruinous powers, unleashing untold warp storms and destabilizing the galaxy in ways that would delight the dark gods. On the other hand, the Tyranids represent a threat even to chaos itself. The Hive Mind, utterly devoid of ambition, corruption, or individuality, cannot be swayed or corrupted by the temptations of the warp. The Tyranids' mindless hunger offers no foothold for chaos, and should the Hive Mind consume all life in the galaxy, even the warp itself might grow silent, deprived of the emotions and souls that fuel it. This paradoxical outcome might force the Chaos Gods to intervene against the Tyranids, an act of desperation from beings who typically revel in conflict and destruction. For humanity, the psychological and cultural ramifications of Terra's consumption would be profound. The fall of the Emperor's throne world, long considered unassailable, would shatter the myth of imperial invincibility. Even among the faithful, doubt would spread like wildfire, leading to mass defections, rebellions, and splintering across the Imperium. Rogue traders, planetary governors, and even some space marine chapters might abandon the Imperium altogether, carving out their own independent domains or seeking alliances with xenospecies to survive. The Space Marines, humanity's genetically engineered supersoldiers, would find themselves at a crossroads. While many chapters would fight to the bitter end in defense of humanity, others might see the fall of Terra as a sign of the Imperium's failure and choose their own paths. Some might attempt to rebuild the Imperium in their own image, while others might turn to darker powers or even join the Tyranids, their genetic material providing new opportunities for the Hive Mind to evolve. On a larger scale, the consumption of Terra would signal the ultimate failure of humanity's dream of galactic dominion. For 10,000 years, the Imperium has fought to preserve a fragile, crumbling empire, its strength rooted in its ability to inspire fear and loyalty among its subjects. Without Terra, that cohesion would dissolve. Planets and systems once united under the banner of the Aquila would drift apart, becoming isolated, vulnerable, and ripe for conquest by other galactic powers or the Tyranids themselves. The galaxy itself would change irrevocably. The Tyranid Hive Mind, now more powerful than ever, would shift its focus to other key regions of the galaxy, targeting ancient strongholds like Comarak, the Webway, and Necron Tomb worlds. The Eldar, desperate to preserve their own dwindling numbers, might be forced into open warfare on an unprecedented scale, abandoning their usual tactics of evasion and manipulation. This could lead to the last, greatest battles of the Eldar race, a final act of defiance before their inevitable extinction. Even the fabric of the galaxy might begin to unravel. The Tyranids, consuming worlds at an accelerated pace, would disrupt ecosystems, starve entire sectors, and destabilize the natural balance of life. The destruction of Terra would mark the point of no return, a cascade of events leading to the galaxy's gradual transformation into a barren wasteland stripped of all life and resources. While some isolated bastions of resistance might hold out for centuries or even millennia, the ultimate outcome would be inevitable. A galaxy dominated by the Hive Mind, where the light of sentient thought and civilization is extinguished. In this grim scenario, hope would become a fleeting and fragile thing, clung to only by those too stubborn to accept reality. Yet, in the Warhammer 40,000 universe, hope is often the greatest weapon of all. Even in the face of utter annihilation, humanity's resilience and defiance might endure. Somewhere, amidst the darkness, a new force might rise to challenge the Tyranids, a splinter faction of humanity, an unforeseen Xenos alliance, or even a miraculous resurgence of the Emperor's power. Until that day, however, the galaxy would belong to the Tyranids, and the consumption of Terra would remain a testament to the devastating hunger of the Hive Mind. The fall of humanity's heart would echo across the stars as the end of an era, heralding the reign of a nightmare born from the void beyond the galaxy.